All right, we're gonna watch the video sent to us.
Now you know what I seek, Morris. Release the demons from my...
Wait, we got Kane back? Oh, it's 2. It's 2. It's Diablo 2 remastered. It's Diablo 2 remastered. Come on.
Lord of Terror.
Come on. Show it to me.
Though this be our darkest hours, it may yet
There we
be
go.
your greatest moment.
I knew it was there somewhere. Somewhere out there I knew. Somewhere out there. Yo, sick. Ooh, love the campfire. Oh, that multi-shot looks awesome. Wow. Yo. And console, okay. All right. That'll be interesting. Oh, that leap attack was awesome. Oh, the Diablo fight is gorgeous.
Not even death.
Oh, Resurrected. Let's go! Come on! So that was super exciting. I'm MrLlamaSC. I am a Twitch streamer. I have been playing Diablo 2 for 20 years, streaming it for 6 years. I probably have over 25,000 hours in this game and just absolutely love it. So seeing the remaster happen, I have to just, of course, ask a very first high-level question. Why the D2 remaster right now?
Well, Diablo 2 is a very special game to Blizzard, as many of you well know, and Diablo 2 also had its 20th year anniversary. So with that, we really wanted to stay true to what that authentic experience was for Diablo 2 and bring it to the current audience and improve it for the existing audience and invite new people to experience it for the first time. It's also good learning opportunities too for us, especially when we're partnering up with Vicarious Visions now to work on a remaster projects like this together.
So it's been a great partnership. We've actually worked with Blizzard for a while now, a couple years, even starting with some BattleNet integration type things. We just finished Tony Hawk Remaster. Before that, we did Crash Bandicoot Remaster, and it just seemed like a perfect match for us to work together.
It was a shock to my system to first to come in and then see that it's a remaster trailer. Was not expecting that. But then to see the complete shift in the design and the art and everything. And I'd really love to hear more about how you came up with the process for how you want to remaster the look of it, right? How you wanted it to visually exist. And I'd love to bring in Chris Amaral to talk about some of that. Chris, can you discuss a little bit of the philosophy and the design decisions around this remaster?
So luckily we had a ton of good inspiration from the original D2 art. Our primary focus is always nostalgia, right? We want to make sure we focus on getting this right and deliver an authentic experience that players remembered from 20 years ago. Every choice we make with the art, with the models, with the environments should really ignite that nostalgia and then reinforce that emotional connection from the original game. But then we came up with like a 70-30 visual guide. 70% is basically the classic. This is where we don't touch. We don't touch what works, right? We want to maintain those iconic shapes, colors, tones. Everything should be one-to-one and faithful to the original. We want things to feel authentic and preserve those original designs. With the 30% new, that's kind of where we're going to elevate that art. Every change we make should really signify that step forward visually.
I also noticed that the game was 3D, and can you talk a little bit about the discussion or how you moved and some challenges moving from 2D to 3D?
Well, I mean, evolving from a 2D sprite game, like a 2D image game, to a 3D is very challenging. We basically had to write a complete new PBR renderer, so a physically based renderer on top of the old game logic. It's difficult because you're dealing with models versus 2D sprites, where you have to basically write. You have dynamic lighting, you have dynamic VFX. Like, a lot of that is an additional system that we have to work out on our end.
So the follow-up to that question, I suppose, is I wasn't able to see any items when I was watching that trailer. Are all of the items also going to be remastered? All of the gems, all of every single piece of this? And what sorts of flavor did you decide to add to that artwork?
So everything is being redone. So we remodeled everything because everything has to drop in the game. So you have your icon art, and then you have your 3D space art that flips, right? So we had to basically model everything. And as far as the inspiration, we actually were inspired by some original documentation that we found from Blizzard North, where there was a huge Word doc of like where the original artists pulled inspiration from. So a lot of that was like very historical landmarks, locations, and very very much real world referencing. So that was kind of where we kind of pulled our inspiration as well. We wanted that functional design that the original art had. Everything felt like it was believable, and that detail really does help to give it some realistic context and makes you feel more immersed in the game. Like, it makes you feel like you're part of this world when you can see every little buckle and strap.
I remember when we went into the tavern and there was garlic hanging from a beam, and we're all like, what's the garlic? And this is all full 3D everything, and then they're like, oh yeah, there was garlic in the old game. We go back and it's like 4 white sprites, and you're like, holy cow, yeah, garlic, and there's hams hanging and everything. So it was really cool to see it almost for the first time.
And it's funny because original SD, like, it was made in all 3D. So we actually came across a bunch of screenshots that were a different camera. Like, it wasn't the isometric camera. It was like either marketing art or something else, or maybe just exploration. But there was shots of that garlic in the original art. You could never really see it in the pixel art, but it was there. So it was telling that they were really trying to achieve something very very grand with this art.
I'm not gonna lie, I never knew that they had garlic hanging in there. I mean, maybe a couple white sprites. I thought they were maybe candles, or who knows? No clue. But that makes me excited to go look around now and just like explore all of the areas in the game, just to look at the new detailed art and see what was.
Well, you see it now too, because also we have the one new feature for the art, on the art side of things, is a zoom camera. So it'll help you get in there and look at all the details. Like, it was something that I really felt strongly that, like, a lot of ARPGs that come out now all have a zoom feature. So this will really get you up and close and personal with like your armor, your weapons, like everything, the runes.
Another way to look at it too is our legacy toggle feature, where you can flip back between the old visuals of the game and our current visuals. It's not even just a simple art swap. It is really the old game running underneath, because like Chris was mentioning, our new art engine our graphics engine is running on top of the game, and is mimicking what is running underneath. It's still following all the same data and rules and timings of everything. So we are still being true to that 25 frames per second of what the game is underneath, but rendering it in a way that has more frames per second.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that specifically, because when I go into Diablo 2, I'm thinking 25 FPS, and like you said, the game is built on that. My faster casting, my hit recovery, all of this stuff is built on 25 FPS. So how do you create a game that's 60 FPS?
So all of the logic and how the game talks with the server and everything like that runs on that cycle, and that hasn't changed. So we still have benchmarks in all of our content, say for animations of when a hit frame occurs, how long it can recover, and all of that. That all matches exactly. Now it can run at a faster frame rate, and so modern games run on time, not frames. So we've done that, but all of the logic still runs on those same things. So you can wait for your breaks to occur. All of those things still happen at the exact same. And that was through no small effort, but it's super important, right? Because even if you can't see it right away, you feel it when it's different. We've done that on lots of areas. So for example, the original game only had so many sprites to render your rotation. So you'd have your character and they're rendered out at so many angles, and the monsters even less. But you could actually walk at greater directions, right? You have, I think it was 64 different squares around you that you would path to, and you'd have feet sliding. We've increased that, so now there's more granularity. Obviously it's 3D, your character can run straight, but underneath the hood, I mean, this is a game made back when the inspiration was tabletop games, and so the game is a grid, so it still respects that grid, right? Like on the controller will still allow you to move small amounts, because you push the stick a little bit, but it's still, you're either in a run state or a walk state, stamina's still a thing, you're still on a grid. Like all of that logic, once again, is all being driven by the old game. That hasn't changed.
Rob was mentioning animation. Animation is also like, it was very challenging because, you know, you only had a few of the frame counts basically to make that animation. So it wasn't like a modern game where you have tons of different keys to make it very fluid animation. But we had to really like maintain that timing, that pace. The posing was a big focus for us too. We wanted to get those iconic poses for each character, and then just align that silhouette.
So continuing the talk of visuals, I want to talk about characters, cosmetics, how they look. Because I know something that I love with Diablo 2 is just putting on, you know, a scale mail, putting on a full plate mail, putting on a sacred armor, and seeing the character like have the different change and all of that. But some things still don't like reflect over in the color of it or whatnot, right? Some do, some don't. Is there going to be changes there, or is it just enhancing all of those visuals and making them just look even cooler?
So our goal was to basically be one-to-one with parity with the original game. So we built every piece of armor that was in the original game and is now in the remastered version. The only difference we did is with the icon items. So now we have a more connected visual with the icon and the item that drops in the game, where before you had different visuals. That's really the only thing we pushed on as far as modernization.
Yeah, so like shields or weapons, a lot of the unique items that you find in the game had special kind of icon arts, right? And that is something we're actually going to be showing on your character in the new visuals.
That definitely excites me. I think that's something a lot of people would love to see, you know, a lance guard and have the cool stuff actually on their character there.
It will be the same model you see on those icons.
Are we going to see remastering of the cinematics in the game?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Yep, the entire full 28 minutes or whatever is going to be all remastered with new high fidelity art. It's going to look amazing, by the way. So
will the sound in those also be remastered, and any other sound in the game be remastered?
All of the audio has been remastered, as well as we've added additional surround sound features. There's more ambient, there's more effects going on. It's just a richer experience if you want to play with your, full setup. However, we have to use that measured hand as well with audio. There's just a lot of very, very iconic sounds that we really couldn't change, right? Like if you put a skull into your inventory, that pop noise,
don't change my skull sound.
Exactly, right? So there are certain things you're gonna, you'll hear. For like your footsteps running will have some variety. When the rain kicks in, it's going to have a lot more depth. When you go to the jungle, you'll hear a lot more life in those trees. But yeah, there's just some sounds we couldn't mess with, right?
With Blizzard, when we're creating new games, one of our design philosophies is to what we call find the fun. And when we were looking at D2 again, we very much felt like the fun is still there. So it's actually one of our core pillars for Diablo 2 Resurrected specifically was to keep the fun and keep it at its core. And because of that, we're looking at it more as a remaster at that point, and like what can we do based on what the community wants or what features naturally are necessary for making this game run on modern day systems and things like that.
I think also we want to thank and appreciate the fan base, right? This is really a true nod to the original game. We want to preserve that game and the structure of that game as much as we can. And if we went with the the remake, it would be a completely different game. So I think that was the reason why we chose this.
Speaking, from my experience or from some of my community's experience and the discussions we've had, we definitely felt like with Diablo 2, a remaster just seemed like the way to go, because there's so many, like you said, there's so many of those tiny details within the game that create, overall, when you add them up, create such a big part of the experience of the game. And remaking that into a new game could be a challenge, and could also be a challenge in keeping the fun of the game in that way. I kind of look at it a little bit like StarCraft Brood War, which also had a remaster, and how it's like a lot of the pathing bugs and the duds from the Reavers and all of these things in the game that were kind of awful are what make the game beautiful and what make the game super balanced. And if you were to go and remake it and remove some of those issues, it would change how the whole entire game plays. And so I felt like with Diablo 2, that's kind of the same idea, right? You got to keep some of those difficult details, because then it ends up creating the overall experience that we all know and love.
Yeah, we also felt that, for a game during its time back in 2000, based on limitations, or everyone was still looking at strategy guides or just limited internet, it led to that kind of typical game design you see, where there was a lot of mystery, discovery. So we felt like that was another part of part of keeping the fun, which was to maintain that discovery of the game as well. So speaking to maintaining and possibly changing, what are the pieces that did end up staying the same? Or if it's easier to explain the other way, what are the pieces that were really changed to bring this remaster to life? So at its core, we want it to still be the same. So right away, things like the balance, the monsters you see on the spawn rates, item drops, and things like that are the same. And what we're doing is trying to take any of the rough edges you see, compatibility issues, resolution issues, and obviously the art, improving the arts as well. All these kinds of things you come to know from a remaster, but still maintaining very much what the game is. And
when it comes to the features we added, this is probably the biggest area where we scrutinize so much is this addition straying too much? Does it still create the same gameplay experience and other things like that? So things like a shared stash, we know people use mule characters, right? And so adding a shared stash we felt was the right choice when it came.
We have a shared stash?
We have a shared stash.
Yeah. We have a shared stash.
Oh, thank God.
Now the way that the shared stash works is there are rules, right? You can't have your ladder characters mixing a stash with a non-ladder character, and you can have your offline characters, can't use your online. But for the most part, we're like, people do this anyway with a mule character, so it's okay to give them this feature.
That is like the greatest feature that you could add, because there's nothing worse than opening up the game, going in, dropping all your GG items to mule them over because you've run out of space, and then not being able to log back in, or the game's not created, or it didn't perm in time, and losing all of your gear, or trying to find someone to help you transfer your gear over, because, oh my gosh, a shared stash is amazing. Thank you so much. That's such a help.
Like I said, maintain the core was a thing, but the other aspect of it was to see where we can improve, right? So the shared stash is one of them, because we saw it as a very common concern, especially around muling, which people had workarounds anyway, right? So that is one thing. Another example is we are reimagining the UI in the game. With a new reimagined UI, we're still trying to stay very faithful to what you come to expect. So you'll still have the classic globes on the HUD screen, the skill icons, the potion belts, and all that. But we are reorganizing a little bit. We're trying to integrate the menu buttons and the stamina bars closer together within the HUD, so it's built a little bit cleaner. And naturally with reimagining a UI, we have some liberties to add a few things. So going back to the information I was talking about, a big thing we're doing on the character screen is we're adding an advanced stats screen as well. So we're going to be showing you all the information you get from items as well. So you don't have to do that kind of math with looking at each of your items and calculating how much magic find you have, for example. It'll all be like summarized right there for you.
Something that we've seen already in a lot of mods where they've gone ahead and taken that information and created a little screen. So that's really nice to see that you guys are implementing that as well. Because I don't think anybody likes sitting down and counting up the magic find of every specific item, and all of their charms and all of everything to figure out what is the number, how much do I have.
We've also added auto gold, so you can opt in. It is a feature you can turn off, which is one of the things we have to be careful of. A handful of other things where we're like, if you want this, you can turn it on, but you can also keep it off. This was actually something that we started looking into when we were adding controller support. There's a lot of paths that we could have taken with controller support. Obviously for controllers on console, which we're coming out on, but allowing just plug a controller in for accessibility reasons. For that might be the way you want to play, but it's a PC first experience. Like for example, there's still an inventory grid, there's still inventory Tetris. That's core to what Diablo 2 is, right? Taking that away, it starts to become something different.
And I love that. I think that's the perfect way to really introduce it, because you're going to have that split in the community. You're going to have half the people who say, just give me auto gold. It's 2020. I don't want to worry about having to pick up every individual gold stack. But then you're going to have the opposite side of purists who go, don't touch this. Like, that completely changes my game experience. And, if I'm speedrunning through the game or playing through whatever, I want to be able to go over and pick up the gold stacks and take that time. And that's more a part of the Diablo 2 experience for me. I want to jump back to features in a second. But before we do, you just brought up console play, and I feel like we have to jump into console, the decision for console, and how you're gonna make that work. You already talked a little bit about like auto gold, having that to be a little more accessible. But when I think of Diablo 2, I think of a mouse going and clicking everywhere and how does this work on a console?
To say it wasn't a challenge would be a bold lie. So there's a couple things. For the most part, the game thinks you're still using a keyboard and mouse with a controller. That was almost a rule we kept, that helped keep us on the rails, because we didn't want to be sacrificing once again that authentic experience. But we did want to make it more accessible, bring it to a modern audience. I mean, there are people who were born after this game came out that we want them to enjoy it and play it. And a lot of those people are used to, just more modern titles that could use a controller. Also, from an accessibility of just allowing you to plug in a controller helps for many other people to get to enjoy the game. The biggest thing I think that the two big things we'll say. One is you're changing the way you play the game from being kind of an eye in the sky and telling your hero what to do by clicking on areas to actually being your character and directing them. So pathfinding is gone, right? Because you're doing the pathfinding and things like that, which creates some very interesting things. For example, the sorceress's teleport is meant to teleport to wherever you click. So in that area, when you're playing on the console, we will have a kind of a default distance that you will teleport to. Whereas on the PC, you can click wherever you want. Same with Barbarian's Leap, although that one's interesting because it levels, but it's become a very, very fun challenge. Like, I'm a necromancer and I need to target an item on the ground that has a certain keyword. It's working so far, but you guys will be the ultimate judge of that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of talks back and forth, play testing and things like that. A big challenge we had too was categorizing, all those 300 character skills to see how each of them really play, to see what challenges there were. And yeah, like Rob mentions, the Necromancer Iron Golem is a favorite of ours to continuously talk about because of the various ways it can target. Also, like a Sorcerer's Telekinesis is another example.
Watching the trailer, we see the Assassin and Druid at the campfire. We see a Druid casting Tornado. I have to ask though, even still, this includes Lord of Destruction, right? This is going to be a full encompassing remaster and not just classic or just a piece?
That's correct. Yeah, we are going to be including both the base Diablo 2 and the expansion Lord of Destruction as well. And we're even keeping the mode of playing non-expansion character as well, right? So you could still play a classic barbarian, for example, and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Because that was something I was also going to ask was, will there be classic mode? Because once again, when you go to the purist, you always have the people that go back all the way and they're like, classic is pure and that's it, and I won't play anything else.
Yeah, it was very much a mode we wanted to keep. Even based on popularity, it might not be as much, but it's still a part of the game, and it still leads to interesting ways of playing too, right? A lot of it's even data driven too, so like a lot of the reasons to keep it were pretty clear to us. Like, let's make sure we're not taking something away from this remaster.
I'd love to go ahead and start talking about some of the other features, or continue talking about some of the other features that you had mentioned before, because hearing each of these already has gotten me so excited for this game. And so what are some other little things that you felt could be changed, wouldn't change the whole flow of the game, but just improve it a little bit?
One thing we're looking into is making it easier to interact with your stash. So having quick keys to move to your stash is one thing versus like dragging the mouse to every time you want to move something to your stash. Other things we're looking at as well are like an item comparison tooltip. So in case you're looking at some other item, you can hold shift or whatever controller button is mapped, and then you can see what equipped items you have just for quick glances, things like that.
The item comparison is a great example of us adding it, but added it with a measured hand. So we don't suggest any gear for anybody. The gear in Diablo 2 is so quirky and different, and every class can use everything, that us recommending things like that actually was more confusing to people. So you hold shift and it's like, here's what you got equipped, here's what it is.
I think that's the great way to do it with Diablo 2, because I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the best parts about Diablo 2. The items are so fantastic, so unique in their own design, that it would be near impossible to have a tooltip that could actually recommend one or the other, because it's all so unique to every situation and character and skill build and everything.
We added 5 more languages, so that's a feature to a lot of people who speak those other languages. The whole front end is pretty much modernized now, so your character is much bigger front and center right in the beginning, and you'll have a backdrop of whatever act you're in. So that's all been streamlined. You can still, play online or offline, but that flow has been improved.
So what are your favorite changes that each of you have within the game so far?
There's a lot of fun. It's fun to see a lot of the art come to life with our new visuals. So for me, one of the things I've been waiting for since first starting on this game was to see that character creation campfire scene come to life in our new arts, and I'm really happy to see how far it's progressed, and I love seeing that. It's just such an iconic moment. It's the first thing you really see in the game before you get started, and it's amazing.
Can I say all the art? No, I'm just kidding. So we added, like Rob mentioned, we added an act-specific screen in the front end. And it's basically this large screen where we have like a diorama of each act, and it's amazing to see, because it feels like you're really there. Like you can see the detail, you can see every aspect of the scene, and it just has that very immersive feeling to it. So that's probably my favorite part.
I think mine is a little bit more squishy. I think our game has gotten a little scarier. I think that there are certain areas in the game where just the way that the 3D lighting is and the way the sound is, and I play it on a big screen TV sometimes, and just it feels scarier, it feels creepier, a little more claustrophobic in certain areas. That's not just one feature, there's a lot of things going on there, but I think it's really, really cool. I would like to hope that had the original creators had the tools we have today, it's the experience they would have wanted to make.
Yeah, I think the lighting really helps with that too, because we're a 3D game. That's one of the biggest differences between the original games. So what the game had before with the sprites, with 3D models built into sprites, was not a true real-time lighting system. So because we're pushing that with a 3D graphics engine running on top of the game and getting actual 3D lighting inside of those kinds of caverns and corridors, makes for a very interesting experience now, because it just feels more immersive with having light react around you like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, I've only seen the trailer piece you sent me, but even from that, just seeing like down in the tunnels or the sewers or, you know, any of those like you said, cavern dungeonous zones, the lighting, it was darker and brighter, and then things like the skeletons with the fire, it just had like this different, I agree, creepier feel. So I haven't seen much more than, or anything more than you guys showed me, but there was definitely a different feel to the game, and I loved the fire the most. I think just watching like the sorceress meteor was like gorgeous.
Fire and lightning, once we got all the effects up and running, that was definitely a couple of times where we would be just in a review and we're like, oh, like, and 10 minutes would go by and we're like, oh crap, we had a meeting, we were just playing now. Another thing that kind of goes without saying, that just because it's parody, but 8-player multiplayer, that just works. But once again, it was tricky to get that going.
So with multiplayer, are there going to be any changes, any differences in there from PvP to trading to how players interact, you know, units blocking each other? I mean, all sorts of stuff.
So with multiplayer, we want to keep all the features you've known and loved there. So PvP will still be there, down to like opening the party window and engaging hostility. Trading is still going to function the same as you know. You know, you can go into games, trade items, or talk in chat channels and things like that. Areas of improvement, though, like I said, going back to my mentioning of reimagining a lot of the UI, improvements to the battlement lobby. So we're trying to look at some things like improving like how you browse server games. Like, so when you're looking at a game to join and typing passwords and things like that, that's the kind of area we're trying to see how we could smooth out in ways like making sure you can browse normal games, nightmare games, and hell games, even though you've graduated to the higher difficulty. I'm sure you've known that.
There's nothing worse than accidentally killing Bale in Nightmare when you're trying to do Nightmare Bale runs and you're like, I can't find any of the games anymore for Nightmare Bale runs.
But you can if you log into a separate character.
Right, you go to a separate character and then look at it.
That was kind of our logic, right? Since there are workarounds there, that made it easier for us to make the decision of allowing some of those things. Another change is also looking into reducing ladder seasons overall. So right now, ladder seasons in Diablo 2 are 6 months, and we're looking at reducing that as well to help have more engagement and kind of drive more incentives too. You know, 6 months is a long time, and we're looking into like if we make it shorter, we could probably have greater beats throughout the year, as well as seeing people strive harder for getting like that to that level 99, right?
So is there going to be any reward change on that, or will it just simply be, you know, the same standard? You get to 99, you're 99 on that leaderboard, and I mean that's a giant reward in itself. But I don't know if there's any other piece go up on the Battle.net website or something.
We're not looking into adding anything beyond what the game really did, but in some ways there will be some things that kind of come out of because of what we changed. So we have the leaderboard, right, where you can see each class going to level 99. There are easier ways to filter through that. And we're also looking into saving that, right? So you can always look back to previous seasons as well. So in a way, we're creating that kind of legacy now that has kind of been dropped from the past. So that's one advantage, is your names could be there in the legacy if you're looking in the past.
I mean, I think that would be cool enough. Just anything to keep it there as like forever. Like this was season 1, season 2, you know? Like that's when I got my 89. Because I know a lot of people like to go and reflect kind of on their old characters and pushes and stuff like that.
Character expiration will not be a thing anymore, by the way.
Ooh,
Due to modern Battle.net integrations, you will not have to worry about refreshing your character, so they will stay with you.
Awesome. Will there be anything different with like character names then, if that's the case?
Oh, yeah. So this was one that we talked about for a very, very long time. So because we are moving to global servers and we have cross progression, we will allow duplicate names because with everyone being in the same thing across all consoles and all platforms and other things like that, you would very quickly bump into duplicates like day one. And so we are allowing duplicate names. However, they will also be appended with your gamer tag or your Battle.net ID or the things like that, so that you are still unique. But this also allows us for people to play the game quicker, because we can autofill in your name, other things like that.
Rob touched on it a little bit, but another mention there was going to global servers as well. So this is a new thing we're doing, where the concept of US West, US East, Asia regions, and EU are no longer going to be a thing in terms of like being on separated servers. So now, for the push for a global play with Diablo 2, you can now be able to join across people around the world.
I think that's a fantastic change. That's always been one of the like saddest parts, is like they're on EU and I'm on, US East, and then my other friend's on US West, and it's like, how do we get us all together? Like, okay, somebody has to make a sacrifice there. And so that seems like a really positive change. So far, you guys are killing it. I'm loving absolutely. I just want to say, like, I'm loving all of the changes and all of the decisions that have been made. It feels like you're really respecting the integrity of the game, but really bringing in a lot of that quality of life, because Diablo 2 just had some of those pain points like muling and separate servers and all of that. So I just want to throw that out there really quick.
There's a lot of love and care going on into this. Like we're very passionate about Diablo 2. I can even give you a little anecdote of when I started on the team. I was asking around too. Naturally, as a designer, I want to know as much as possible about this game in order to make good decisions on a remaster. So I asked around, like, what kind of files and leftover archives do we have from before, from Blizzard North? And I was told, like, I was given some, and like this, I was told that was it, which I quickly disbelieved, because I like to just do my own little digging arounds to find out things. So I dug around a lot in a lot of archives, and I looked around in different teams as well, because naturally a game from 20 years ago, people have moved on different teams, and like, where has data moved around across our other games across Blizzard. So it was within folders, I like to say, that I found a lot of old source files from Diablo 2. A lot of things, like within folders of saying stuff we should archive. And there was a lot of stuff to archive indeed, because there are a lot of things, like we're talking like model source files, old tools that Blizzard North used to create like the sprites and things like that. All these things I spent months and months organizing and communicate that out to the team, and help getting Blizzard library team and other people to help out too, to help share as much information as possible, which helps a lot with when we're adapting some of these models and whatnot and making new art out of it, because sometimes those pixels aren't good enough, and if we have some kind of source model to look at, if we have it, now we can make even closer decisions.
On that day when he found that, I think that really helped me greatly. Like, we sent all of that imagery, even the models, I think we sent over to the outsource teams and different art teams, which they used as like a stepping stone. The only piece of art we actually reused one-to-one were Tyrael's wings. So we actually took the Tyrael wings from the old Max file, and then just repurposed that for hours. Like, we did very little work, very little modernization of that. We just made it work. But yeah, we did follow a lot of the rules that the old game actually used. For like another example is the succubus, in which I think the old Blizzard North model, they reused the assassin mesh for the body, and we did the same thing. We use our assassin mesh for the succubus.
Yeah, a lot of fun discoveries that we're actually kind of making the same decisions on in interesting ways. Another example too, like, is because we found a lot of stuff. There's a lot of old texture files for some environments on the game. So another example is like the walls you see in the Act 2 tombs with those kinds of like paintings on them are the same textures we're using, because we found the source files for those. Any
symbology we have questions on, we always like jump into that archive, try to find some kind of source or reference or something, and we just reuse it as much as possible. We want this to be as true as possible.
That can even carry over to the cinematics too, like a lot of the cinematics cover the same locations. Think of like Tal Rasha's tomb with Baal in front of it, and there's all those runes going on behind him. Finding sources like that to try to match as much as possible was a goal, and I'm glad to say we did find those kinds of things and are matching it very well. So it's helping our cinematics too.
There was even concepts we repurposed. Like we found a couple concepts that were amazing from 20 years ago, the Bloodhawk and the Bloodhawk Nest, and we used that completely to rebuild our new asset.
I mean, that's fascinating. I feel like I could just sit here for hours and hours, days, as you guys talk through every single thing you found in the source files.
I could too. I'm still organizing it to this day. I still could find something that could work out. As I put it, I'm very meticulous with this stuff because I love it so much. I'm putting like categorizing everything. Like this is everything I found on War Eve. This is everything I found on the Greater Mummy Monster or Bale or something. And then if Chris comes to me and needs help with like some kind of way of identifying what parts of the creatures are or something, I even go through lengths of like seeing if I could open up those models. And actually re-rendering them out in a way that we could actually see it in higher detail and see the Greater Mummy is showing like part of his bone on his knee, so we should try to match that or something like that. And there's a lot of interesting stories and references that we actually used to create the new art by re-rendering models out to see everything.
Yeah, it was literally like video game archaeology, and even learning how parts of D1 were made, parts of the code that were commented out. Totally geek out on just all of the, because it's a game that we all kind of grew up in, and a lot of us got into the games industry because of these types of games, and this game in particular, right? And so it's almost like we're treating it like a classic car, right? Like, okay, it probably shouldn't run on leaded gas anymore, but you really can't change it, right? You just got to make it, good enough, even better, than they remember, and good for another 20 years.
Yeah, and even mention of Diablo 1 is very key too. Like we look at Diablo 1 as well, because naturally this being a sequel to Diablo 1, especially within the time span of when it came, like Diablo 1, was 1996 and Diablo 2, 2000. A lot of things carried over throughout development. So going back to see Diablo 1 and what it's like also helped us make decisions, even some of the arts too, because we discovered certain things we didn't even realize before until later down the line. Like an example is in the Chaos Sanctuary, you see a lot of statues with these black knights, and those are actually the same Chaos Knights you see in Diablo 1. So sometimes some of the things I find even source files from Diablo 1 were useful for us for reference, so we can make the new statues and things like that.
Even the Sorcerer and the Act 3 Hireling shared very similar models. Like it was just an addition helmet or a little bit of detail on the chest, but that was really the difference.
You guys need to do a developer archaeology discussion at some point where you just sit down and talk through all of this, because this is the most fascinating stuff I've heard. I mean, I've played so much Diablo 2 that I know so many intricacies of the game, but when there's more to be discovered, it's oh man, I'm itching to know. So I would love to just listen.
The funny thing is going back to our core philosophies on the game, we wanted to keep discovery and the mystery and stuff. Because you keep discovering things all the time when you play Diablo 2, all these little hidden rules and informations. It kind of carries that fascination over through development as well. We find a lot of things in the code, design documents, models, things like that were really fascinating to see how they were made. And I learned something new every day on the projects.
One thing, shifting back to the online play here, I know there's definitely going to be questions around security. How are we handling duping? How are we handling bots? How are we handling, just anything around that, realm downs, and all of the disconnects and all of that good stuff that we deal with online? What's being taken, or what actions being taken there?
So moving over to modern BattleNet helps us with a lot of those types of things. To say it's Loctite, I wouldn't dare do that. That's like throwing a gauntlet down to the community to try to break it. But all of that should be far more secure now. Now, we do still allow you to play offline, right? You will need to authenticate that your copy is legit, but after that, you won't be bothered. And so there's a reason why we leave those characters quarantined away from online.
I mean, yeah, we have a server team working on it, and these are some of their efforts, right? We want to stop the bots, stop duping as much as possible. There's a lot of strides happening in the back end of things.
So I'm excited to play this game, and I'm sure a lot of other people are very excited. How can we sign up for this closed beta, and when will this game be coming out?
Actually, we will be doing a technical alpha, and you can sign up on our webpage today for future waves of invites. As for the game itself, it will be releasing 2021.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the remastering team right here. I absolutely am blown away by how much effort and how much passion you guys are putting into this game and just into Diablo 2. I've loved Diablo 2 for 20 years, and I never thought that the game could get better. But I think you guys are respecting the integrity while upgrading and adding and improving, and I think this is going to overall just better the game. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you having me on and for all of the hard work you've done.
Awesome, thank you. I mean, your praise means the world to us. I mean, you and people like you who keep the game going for 20 years. Like, that's, if you guys didn't do that, this might not be happening, right? We see the passion in what you do, in what your colleagues do. Like, so thank you even more. And thanks for coming to do this. This was fun.